All right, good evening, everybody. Thanks for joining me. We'll go ahead and get started here. If you've got a question, go ahead and post it. It's going to be in the below the video. If you're on a mobile device, smaller screen. For a larger screen, then it's going to be to the right of the video, like a laptop or desktop computer, something like that. So I start with questions that were asked up to an hour ago. So if you happen to post your question more than an hour ago, so that's before 4 p.m. Eastern time, and you're here waiting to see your question get answered, no worries. Just copy and paste your question in there, and we will answer it later on in the office hours. So we'll go ahead and get started here. So Frank R. is the first question, posted 42 minutes ago, but Bob G., Stephen H., it looks like some of these may have been this afternoon or over the weekend. If you're here, and I'm not going to answer these questions, so if you want to get them answered, you just got to repost them in there. All right. So Frank R. says, how much does the shaft affect club head speed? I have an R11 with a stiff flex, but don't have a speed to be using a stiff flex. I keep the ball in play for the most part, but even when I feel like I really got it all, I'm disappointed when I get to the ball and I see the lack of distance. My irons have recoil shafts, and I love them. So shafts can definitely make a difference, when they kick and things like that. So, yeah, they can definitely make a difference. But the only way to know if a shaft's going to help you or not, a different shaft, is just to go get professionally fitted. That's really what it comes down to. If you want to know if equipment's going to be better for you, you just have to you have to try it out. Go get professionally fitted. And I've actually, I've gone and got fitted before, and they told me what you got right now, there's nothing really that's better. You're pretty much optimized with what you got. So, where I've gone is a Club Champion. It's one place that I like to go. I'm not affiliated with them in any way, but I think that they do a great job with the fitting. And like I said, I've gone in there to get a driver fitting just because I was curious. I hadn't had a driver fitting in a long time, and I was curious to see if different shaft, different head, whatever would actually give me more distance. And we couldn't find anything that would. Everything was pretty much what I had was about as good as it gets. So that's the place that you got to go. Now, Club Champion, they're located in several places throughout the United States, several major cities. We have one in Orlando. We have them in, I've seen them in Texas. I know there's one in Chicago, and so on and so forth. So some things to look out for there. Got a couple things running that I think might be slowing things down a little bit. So let me close a few things, and I think that will help. All right, so let's get back. There we go. So yeah, I can definitely make a difference. I wouldn't say it's going to be like a huge difference, but one thing to also keep in mind is to understand what you can expect out of a shot. Now, just because a shot feels great doesn't mean that it's going to go a long way. You have to have speed to go along with it, right? So basically, a solidly struck drive, you can get about 2.6 yards for every mile per hour if you're fairly optimized, meaning that your launch angle is good, you're not putting too much spin on the ball, and things like that. So assuming that, you're going to get about 2.6 yards. So if you're swinging 100 miles per hour, you perfectly hit a drive, it's going to be roughly about 260 yards. Now, that doesn't mean you can't hit it further than that. You can be downwind. You can be playing really firm conditions. You can hit as a 100-mile-per-hour swinger. If you have a firm wind and firm condition, you can hit a 300-yard drive, right? So it comes down to a lot to that. But in general, 2.6 yards for every mile per hour. So I don't know how fast you're swinging, but that's one thing that you have to look at. Now, one thing to also keep in mind is that you can't look at shafts as it's not necessarily based on your club head speed. Now, generally, stiffer shafts are used by people who have higher club head speeds, but that's not all shafts are created equal. One company's stiff flex shaft may be more whippy than another company's regular flex shaft, and so on and so forth. There's no standard to the stiffness of shafts. So that's one thing to also keep in mind. So I would recommend going to get fit, and through the fitting experience, you'll also learn what your club head speed is and what you can reasonably expect out of your drive. So that way, when you go up there, maybe you don't have reasonable expectations. Maybe, you're remembering, like I said, if you have 100 miles, if you swing 100 miles per hour, generally 260 yards is going to be your best drive. But you can hit a 300-yard drive if you got a downwind, downhill, hard fairways. I mean, you could hit it for miles. So one thing you have to keep in mind is a lot of times what we do, and I'm guilty of this myself, is that we'll remember that one drive where we hit it way long, and then we kind of expect them all to be like that. But that's just not the reality of what's going to happen. Those outliers they're outliers for a reason, right? All right, so let's keep moving here. All right, so Kevin M says, "Hi Q, please can you give me a drill for getting my hands ahead of the club face at impact and the left shoulder position, please? Thanks very much." So there isn't necessarily one drill that's going to make that happen for you. It really depends on why you can't do it. So I wish I could just give you one drill that would fix that. But unfortunately, if I knew the reason why you weren't able to get your hands in front of the ball at impact, then I could possibly prescribe one drill to get you there. But there's no way for me to know without seeing your swing and to see what's going on. Basically, my best advice would be to work through the top speed golf system. That's really what it comes down to, because the top speed golf system gets you to where you can do that, to where you can get the hands in front of the ball at impact. So, our stable fluid spine, that's part of it, right? If our spine is all over the place, right? If we're leaning toward the target, we're going to fall away, release early, or maybe we're going to come over the top and things like that. You're going to have a hard time getting the club to release out in front and get shaft lean as a result of that if your spine angles are wrong. So looking at your spine angles. Power turn. If you have a short turn, you may rush the club in the downswing and try to get speed with your hands by really getting a wristy through impact. That's another reason that can be causing it, and you would need to work on the power turn to start getting that to be working a little bit better. Lag. If you're casting the club from the very, very beginning of the downswing, you have basically no chance of releasing that club out in front and getting shaft lean. So if you're casting the club, you may want to look at lag. Compression line, if you're bumping the hips forward like this, right, or not opening up the body like we talk about in the compression line course, then again, if you're bumping out the hips, basically you're stalling the hips. You have to release the club early. We have to get everything opening up as we're coming through to be able to get that club to release out front. So really depends on the reasons. I wish so badly that there was a way that I could just tell you, here's a drill, do it, keep doing it, you'll get shaft lean. But unfortunately, there just isn't. Unless I know what the issue is. Now, I do offer unlimited swing reviews. This is a program where you are able to give me videos of your swing, and then I send you over a lesson back. And it's a personalized lesson that I send you. I'm on there, and I'll show you like a specific drill, or if I have a video, I'll send you a video of the specific drill that you need to work on to get to where you want to go. So hopefully that makes sense. If you're interested in doing unlimited swing reviews, click the Get a Review link at the top of the page, and that will take you to the swing review page where you can sign up. Let me check. I think as of this morning, I had one spot available. Let me double check. Yes, I have one spot available. Oops. I have one spot available right now. So if you're interested, click that Get a Review link. That'll take you to the swing review page, and you can sign up for my unlimited swing reviews. And then I can just tell you, hey, this is the drill, or this is the road to getting your hands in front of the ball, in front of the club face at impact. But unfortunately, there isn't any way for me to know without seeing your swing. All right, so Greg P says, how do you modify the impact positions for sand shots, in particular forward shaft lean and still knuckles down? So with a sand shot, if I assume you're talking about a green side sand shot, we don't necessarily want to have a lot of shaft lean, because that's going to make the leading edge go down. So we want the leading edge to stay up, so that way we can use the bounce. So Here's the leading edge of the wedge here. Sorry if this is blurry. Trying to get this to not be so blurry here. I don't know why it's having trouble. There we go. It's having trouble focusing. So that's the leading edge right there. And then this chunk of metal here is the bounce. We want this leading edge to be up and then the bounce to be hitting the ground. And the reason for that is so that it can glide through the sand. So if we have shaft lean, right? If we have shaft lean and then we turn the handle down, that's going to get that leading edge down. And then that club is going to want to dig into the sand. And that's not what we want, because then it's just going to get lost in the sand. You're not going to be able to get the ball out. So we want to expose the bounce, and you almost want to feel the opposite of the knuckles down. You want to have the knuckles up as you're going through to keep that face open and keep the leading edge up so they can glide through the sand. Think about it this way. If you're water skiing, right, you'd want to have the nose, if the tips of my fingers are the nose of the skis, I'd want to have those skis up so that I glide on top of the water. So now imagine I get the ski or the nose of the ski going down. Where are those skis going to go? They're going to dive into the water. That's what's happening when you get shaft lean in a greenside bunker shot. It's going to go down into the sand. It's going to dig, and then you're going to have a hard time going out. You want to hit the sand, let the club glide through the sand, and then the sand throws the club out when you do that. So basically, you want to set up with the face very, very open and try to feel like you're coming in and you're hitting the sand with the bounce of the club, and you're keeping that face open, almost pointing straight to the sky. So that way the ball, the club will have loft and it will get the sand out of there, or get the ball out of there. All right, so let's keep moving through here. So Bill L says, Q, I manually track my greens and regulation and number of putts, but I want more information. Is there an app you recommend that tracks more data points? I would recommend using Arcos. Arcos Golf is a great, as far as tracking your game, that's probably the best thing out there. Now, personally, I tried it. I wasn't a big fan of it because I felt like it was really distracting to me. But it's the best thing for it. And basically what it is, if you haven't seen it, it's called Arcos Golf. And basically what they do is they have these little things that go on the end of your clubs, and they'll track every single shot they hit. So it has an app, and then it will show you where your weaknesses are, whether it's driving, your approach game, your putting, your sand game, or whatever it might be. It will tell you what your weaknesses are based on your peers. So based on other people at your handicap level. So let's say you're a 14 handicap. It's going to tell you, okay, of 14 handicappers, you're great off the tee, right? Or, but your approach game needs help. So it can kind of tell you what you need to work on. So that way you're getting good information there. And that would be what I would recommend. But like I said, it wasn't for me. I tried it for a little while because I was curious to see what kind of information it was. And as a golf instructor, I'm usually I was pretty aware of the information that it was telling me. Like I knew what parts of my game that I needed to work on. It didn't need it to tell me. But it can find some good information there. But I just felt it was distracting. The things on the clubs were distracting to me. I could never really get used to them. And fiddling with the app throughout the round was distracting to me. It was just a little much for me. I didn't care for it. But I know other Clays used it. I know other people have used it and love it. So that's what I would recommend if you're looking for a lot. There are apps out there. Grint would be one that I know of. I haven't used it, but I've heard people using it and like it. So Grint is what it's called. And it's an app where you can just keep track of things. There's all kinds of them out there. So what I'd recommend doing is just try a few of them and see what you like. I think most of them are free. I believe Grint you can use for free, but there's also a paid version that maybe has a little bit more to it. But that's what I would recommend. Just try a bunch of them and see what you. I personally don't use any of them. I don't play competitively anymore. I only play basically for fun. So I don't really care what my greens and regulation are and my putts and things like that, just because I'm not going to do anything with the information because I'm just playing for free, and the things I'm working on in my swing are just because things that I want. It's not necessarily to play better tournament golf or anything like that, or necessarily play. I'm hoping it leads to better play, but it's just I'm just experimenting with things in my own game. So yeah, that's what I would look at. But yeah, Grint would be one, and then Arcos if you want like the Cadillac of that kind of stuff. There's also one that's called Game Golf, which is similar to Arcos. I don't think it's quite the same, but it's similar and it tracks that kind of stuff too. So Vincent L says, is the move applicable to all shots, including 50-yard pitches? Yes, the move is applicable to basically all shots. So what the move is, let's strip kind of the move down to what it really is. The move is getting the club on plane and square as soon as possible. That's what the move is essentially. So when you're hitting a pitch shot, a lot of times you don't need to, the club's already on plane, right? So you don't need to necessarily do something to get it on plane. The club is probably already close to on plane, and the club is probably already pretty close to square. So there isn't anything that you need to do. But if, let's say, you really open the face a lot, right, and you took the club back steeply. So you took the club back steeply with a 50-yard pitch, and the face is open. Well, you would need to do some shallowing and some squaring of that face to get it to where it needs to be to turn through. Personally, when I hit a pitch, it's almost like pitching on one plane. I don't really open the face. I keep the face pretty square the whole time, and I don't really take the club off plane. The club kind of stays on plane. I bring it up on the plane that it comes down. So there isn't really much shallowing that I need to do. There might be a slight amount of shallowing that I do just to help me to open up a little bit more. But for the most part, there isn't much. Now, for the full swing, because we're getting above the plane typically when we're coming up, and we have to open the face when we're bringing the club back a little bit, because otherwise the club will be like this going up to the top, right? So we have to, when we kind of roll our arms over, right, bringing the club up, there's going to be some opening of the face. So in the downswing, we want to get that club face square and shallow and on plane as soon as possible to promote a better impact. So yes, you're doing it on short shots as well, but there may not be actually anything you have to change to do to make that happen. So Donald P says, should I get new clubs fitted before I start the program? Yeah, if you want new clubs, get new clubs. Basically the way that I look at it is that, if you're someone who's always trying to improve your golf game, it's never going to end. So if you have the idea that, I'm going to get my swing where it needs to be with the top speed golf system, now I'm going to get new clubs. Well, that's not really the reality of what's going to happen. Once you get your swing where you want it, you're going to want something else to be better. You're going to want something else to be better after that and after that. So if you're waiting for everything to be, your swing to be perfect before you get new clubs, that's never going to happen. So if you want to get new clubs, just get new clubs. Just get them. And honestly, they're not going to be, whatever you change in your swing, it's most likely not going to be so different that you have to get all new clubs again. You can you probably won't even need anything to be done to your clubs. And if you do, it's usually just going to be little tweaks that you can get done at any golf shop. Any golf fitter can bend your clubs the way that they need to and things like that to make them more optimized for your new swing. All right, so let's keep going here. So Barry B says, can you talk through how to move from max lag position to full release? Yeah, so basically in the downswing, if you have anything specific here, because this is going to be a fair amount, so I could talk for 30 minutes about this, so I'm not going to go into great detail so I can answer as many questions as possible. If you have something specific question about that area, I'll be happy to answer it. Like I said, this is going to be fairly layman's terms going through here. So when we're talking about max lag position, what we're talking about is when this angle between your lead arm and the shaft gets the sharpest coming down. So here I'm going up to the top, and then I'm coming down. That angle is starting to get sharper, sharper, sharper. And typically Lead arm parallel to the ground. That's when you're going to see the better players have the sharpest angle. And then we get to impact, where we have the club is releasing into impact, but it hasn't fully released yet. And then we get into the straight line release. So as I'm doing that, typically when I get to this lead arm parallel position, when you look at the best players, typically their hips are back to square, right? So hips are back to square, and that lead arm is going to be a little bit inside the target line, basically. So that would be parallel with the target line. That'd be a little bit inside of it. That club's going to be shallowed out, and you're going to be in that max lag position, hips back to square. And then our legs are also going to be in a flexed position. Now, as we come down, the lead leg is going to start to straighten out as we're coming in to impact. So it's not straight when we come into impact, but it's straightening. Typically, you'll see some players where that leg gets straight at impact, but usually, in most players, there's still going to be a little bit of bend in it, but it's straightening, right? So I'm getting here at impact. I'm releasing this club, right? And at impact, typically, my hands are going to be about in front of my lead thigh when you look at the better players. The hips are roughly going to be about 45 degrees open. The chest is going to be about 20, 30 degrees open. The shoulders are going to be typically slightly open to square, somewhere in that area. Some players are square, some players are slightly open. So they're going to be more like this. And then we go into that straight line release position where everything's pointing out in front. So my chest, my shoulders, my hands, the club, my hips, everything is pointing out in front. After that, into that straight line release position. So let me know if you have something specific. I'm not really sure what you're looking for in that answer. But like I said, I can't spend the 30 minutes answering a question to answer everybody's question. So if you have something, specific you want answered regarding those things, let me know. So Dwayne R says, "Hey Q, I like your teaching style as an engineer. I get it. I've been working through the TSG system and with Chris for swing reviews, and I have been seeing some improvements in distance, accuracy, and handicap. Thanks. Awesome, Dwayne. Great to hear. I'm glad to hear you've been getting some improvements with Chris. I think he's a great teacher for sure." So Dwayne R goes on to say, "However, I still struggle a bit with the early release with my hands following down the target line and not around the body. Perhaps due to poor or late hip rotation. Do you have any tips or drills to promote a better hands path post impact?" So what you need to feel is what you need to feel, and it'd be hard to say without seeing your swing for sure. And I don't really want to get in the way of what you and Chris have been working on if you have been working on this. But what we have to understand, if you're an early releaser of the club, right? So our hands are coming down and they're moving to the right at some point, right? So our hands are coming down, they're moving to the right, and then they turn the corner and they start moving to the left. The club does the same thing, right? The club comes down, it moves out to the right, turns the corner, and then starts to move up to the left. So if you're an early releaser of the club, your hands and the club are usually turning the corner at about the same time. The hands may be a little bit earlier if you have some shaft lean, but in general, if let's say you have no shaft lean, you come into contact, you're like this, right? Well, your hands and the club are basically turning the corner at the same time. Well, when you get shaft lean, the hands have to turn the corner quite a bit before the club does. So it's a different sensation of having your hands, basically feeling like your hands are moving to the left as the club head's still moving out to the right. So if you look from this angle, my hands have gotten here, they're starting to turn the corner. So now my hands are moving to the left and the club's moving out to the right. Let's look at it from this angle. So my hands are coming down, they're starting to turn the corner, and my hands are now moving to the left as my club moves out to the right. So that's what I would really try to feel like, is that your hands are really exiting left early. They're coming in, they're ahead, and they're exiting left early as the club is moving out to the right. And I just try to exaggerate that as much as you can. And if you have that visual in your mind and feeling like, okay, hands exiting left, then that can help you out quite a bit to have that proper feeling. So one thing you can do is you can just do some chips, take the club and put it, or take an alignment stick and put it against the club like this, and then do some swings where you're feeling like this can never touch you, this end of the club, that can never touch you, and feel how your hands kind of exit left as you're coming through there. So you're getting the shaft lean and your hands are exiting left, and the stick can't ever get closer to you. So I'm coming in here, my hands are exiting left as my body is opening, all right? My club's moving out to the right, and I'm getting shaft lean because I'm not letting this stick touch me, right? That's what I would try to feel like as you're coming through. But like I said, I'd stick to whatever Chris is telling you. I'm sure he's got you on the right track with whatever you guys are working on. All right, so we got a question here from Dave S. Dave S says, I've been working on the power turn and specifically starting the downswing before the backswing is completed, which is something that Clay talks about in a number of videos. Can you talk a bit about muscle movement to start the downswing action? I saw a Nicholas interview where he mentions to complete the backswing before starting the downswing. Is this contradiction in styles? So basically, let's talk about what technically, because what you're talking about is just people talking in terms, right? So in reality, technically the downswing doesn't start until the club switches directions. So this is all backswing, 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 and then downswing, downswing, downswing. So you can't technically start the downswing before you complete the backswing and vice versa. You can't really do that. It's defined by when the club switches directions. There's no overlap there. Now, there are things that you want to do in the backswing that promote a proper sequencing in the downswing. And I think that that's where some of the confusion is. So basically, if you go up to the top of the swing, and as the club is switching directions, which is when the downswing starts, you haven't shifted any pressure to your lead leg, then you're more than likely going to struggle with chunks, early releases, probably over the top, and things like that. So what we have to be doing is we have to be getting, and usually when you look at the better players, you think about pressure in the feet. At address, they're about 50-50. As they go up in the backswing, in this area, that's when the pressure in the trail foot is peaking. So we're 50-50 right here, and then as soon as the backswing starts, pressure is starting to go into the trail foot. As soon as that club starts going back, there's more pressure going into the trail foot. And it builds and builds and builds and builds until you get into this area right here. And this is when it's going to peak. And that's, at that point, there's about 75-80% of the total pressure that you're putting into the ground with your feet is going to be with the trail foot. Right now, as I get here and as I continue to the top, now I'm taking some of that pressure and I'm shifting it to my lead side. And once I get to the top of the swing, I'm almost recentered. So at the top of the swing, I'm basically back to 50-50 between the feet. But momentum's going in this direction. I'm continuing to shift pressure to my lead side. Now, as I start my downswing, which is the change of directions in the club, that pressure is going to continue to build into my lead side until I get to impact. And at impact, that pressure shift has changed. Now it's 75-80% on my lead foot, right, of the total pressure. And then when I come into the full finish, I'm going to be about 85-90% on my lead foot. And most of that's just the weight of my trail leg. So technically, there's no overlap between the backswing and the downswing. It's when the club switches directions. But in order to have proper sequencing, in order to get to your lead side properly, to have a good compression line, to have a good release of the club, you typically need to be doing things in your backswing that promote a proper downswing. And that's getting that pressure shift to your lead side earlier. So your goal should be getting pressure, shifting pressure to your lead foot before you reach the top of the swing. What I see most people do is they don't shift any pressure initially, or they shift very, very little pressure initially, and then that pressure doesn't start building in the trail leg until we get up here. And then we start the downswing, and we have most of our pressure in our trail leg, in our trail foot, and then the arm, by that time it's too late. We're just swinging the arms in front of the body, and we get what I would call a false weight shift, which is where you're really, or a faux weight shift, where the weight shift is really just coming from the momentum of your arms and the club swinging through, right? Because you've just thrown the club in front of your body, and now the club head and your arms all have momentum going that way, and that brings you all the way through into that picturesque finish that I see a lot of people getting into. But it's kind of a faux finish. It's not a real. It's not what we're seeing the better players doing. What the better players doing are loading up right away, and then as they get up to the top, they're getting to their lead side, and then as they start the downswing, they're continuing to shift pressure into the lead side until impact. That's typically about when it's going to peak, or sometimes it can peak there. You can get to where there's a lot of pressure if you're really putting a lot of force into the ground. But usually, mainly it's peaking at the top of the swing when you're putting 85, 90% of your pressure into the ground. So let me know if you have any more questions about that, Dave. But hopefully that's not confusing, because I know it can be really, really confusing because of the way everyone states it. The down, starting the downswing before the backswing, but that's not really what's going on. There's no overlap between the backswing and the downswing. It's just you're doing things in your backswing that help you to properly sequence in the downswing. All right, so let's keep going here. Renee I, and I apologize if I'm mispronouncing your name, but it says, how do the numbers of the loft of the club, launch angle, and ball speed correlate or put? In other words, what number should I shoot for to be confident that I have the right amount of forward shaft lean for each club? Example, my best pitching wedge shot would be these numbers: pitching wedge, loft angle 35 degrees, launch angle 31, ball speed 93.75, carry 125, apex 95, which seems pretty high for correct shaft length. So what I'd recommend doing, if you want to compare your numbers to PGA Tour players, what I'd recommend doing, I would search for a chart on Google. Just search TrackMan PGA averages, and you will find a chart that shows the PGA average for every club. So it's going to show the club head speed, it's going to show the ball speed, it's going to show the launch angle, it's going to show, I believe, angle of attack. What else does it show? I think it shows apex and things like that. If you have lower club head speed, then I would expect your apex to be a little bit lower, because you're not giving the ball as much energy to stay up in the air, right? So if your club head speed is lower and your apex is about the same, then your launch angle is probably higher as well. So that's what I'd recommend looking at to get an idea of where you should be with things. But really, if you look at your swing and compare it to the top speed golf system, your numbers are going to be pretty dang close to what the PGA Tour is. Maybe not speed wise, but your numbers as far as the launch and things like that, if you're releasing the club correctly and doing all the things leading up to that proper release, then your numbers will correlate to that. So that's what I would recommend doing. But if you want to check it out and see where your numbers should be, then I'd be looking at that. So if we looked it up, let me just do a Google search for it. So PGA TrackMan averages. So let's see. Yep, comes right up. If I go to the images, I click on, so for a pitching wedge, the average club head speed is 83 miles per hour. You didn't mention, so you mentioned your ball speed. So you mentioned your ball speed at 93.75. Average ball speed of a PGA Tour player is 102. So you're a little bit below that. Apex is 29 yards. And they launch it at 35 degrees. So I would say you're launching it pretty high. Launch angle of 31. So yeah, you probably got an early release if you looked at your swing on video. Spin, they give you 9,300 is the average. It gives you the land angle as well, and then the average carry. Average carry for a PGA Tour player is about 136. So even though you're hitting it higher, you're comparatively your distance isn't really that much different. but your launch angle is 7 degrees higher than the PGA average, which is 24.2 degrees. So I'd be working on things to help you to get that better release. The straight line release course would be one of them, but I'd be making sure that the other pieces of the system that are in place before you work on the straight line release, because it's going to be very, very difficult to get that club to release more out in front and to get that launch angle lower if you're not doing the 4 pieces of the top speed golf system that lead up to that. So Michael B says, what adjustments would you make if you were hitting into a strong wind off the tee? So if I was hitting into a strong wind off the tee, I'd probably tee the ball a little bit lower and try to hit a little bit lower. So that way, get it on the ground sooner. That's what I'd try to do. So basically kind of hit a stinger with the driver. So basically what I would do for that is I'd tee it a little bit lower. And then I would try to basically get a little bit more shaft lean coming in. So basically feel like my hands are turning more down as I'm coming in. So maybe put the ball just a hair a little bit further back in my stance and then turn the hands down a little bit so that I'm coming in. I have a little bit more shaft lean and it'll come in a little bit lower. That's basically what I would do. I wouldn't try to hit it harder because it's going to add spin and that's going to make it balloon up in the air. So I would really, really focus on trying to hit it solid so that way it doesn't get too much spin on it. Because when you hit it way off the toe, way on the heels, things like that, you're going to add a lot of spin. If you hit it really low on the face, it's going to add a lot of spin, and that's bad. Into the wind, that the in wind's going to eat it up. So the most important thing is making solid contact. That's really the most important thing. If you hit it solid, even if you normally hit it high, it's still going to be, it's going to pierce through that wind. But generally, what I try to do is I just try to hit it solid and try to get it lower. Basically, try to hit stinger, and the way I hit it lower is just try to get a little bit more shaft lean coming into impact. But if trying to do that makes it more difficult for you to hit in the center of the face, the contact's the most important thing. So not cutting across it, things like that. If you have a big slice, that's going to be tough into the wind. It's just going to slice more. So really focusing on solid contact, getting your face in your path, not trying to put a lot of curvature on it or anything like that. That's what I'd be trying to do. A draw wouldn't necessarily be too bad because that's going to help it get lower on the ground because it's de-lofted more. So typically when I hit a stinger, it's just got it's a little bit of a draw on it. So that's going to help close the face a little bit and get the ball down and on the ground and running as soon as possible. So that's generally what I would do. If it's really wet conditions, I wouldn't really change anything. I wouldn't try to swing hard. I would really just focus on trying to hit as solid as possible, even if it means swinging 5 miles per hour less, because if I swing hard and I hit it, it's going to be inaccurate. It's still not going to go very far because the wind's going to take it. So the number one thing would be center face contact. Would be the focus needs to be that over anything. So David CM says, how do I take the club back to assure an inside out without being too close to my body coming back? Hold on. Let me read that again. How do I take the club back to assure an inside out swing without being too close to my body coming back down? So I'm not really sure what you mean by that last part, being too close to your body coming down, but really what it comes down to is there isn't anything you can do necessarily in the backswing that's going to make you swing from the inside. Now, there's things that may help. Like generally when I see people, if they swing the club more outside the hands, it makes it easier to swing it inside the hands. But I also see people who swing it outside the hands and then swing over the top in the downswing too. So you just have to swing in whatever way in the backswing. The most important thing is swinging. If you're struggling with an over the top, the most important thing is to get that club to swing from the inside. If you look at Raymond Floyd, you look at Calvin Peete, you look at Sam Snead, they all brought the club to the inside, every single one of them. And not one of them had a huge slice, right? So they all came down nicely on planer a little bit from the inside. And that's swinging the club inside. So there's no I guess I think what you're asking is, what do you do in your backswing to make sure you swing it on plane? And there really isn't anything as far as the club path is concerned. If you're having trouble swinging from the inside, some things that I would look at are your spine angle, making sure that you're angled away. That's something we talk about in the top speed golf system. If you're angled toward the target, you're going to tend to want to come over the top. So I make sure that you're angled away in the backswing, and then I would try to feel like you're turning your body. So this is the power turn, making sure that you're getting a good turn. If I don't turn my shoulders, my hands get here. All right, so I haven't turned my shoulders. My hands don't get very deep, and I'm going to throw the club out in front. So if I turn the shoulders, now I can get my hands further back, a lot easier to swing from the inside. So those would be two things I'd be looking at, your spine angle and the power turn, to make it easier to swing from the inside. If you're swinging all arms and leaning toward the target, that is a recipe, no matter where you bring the club back, that is a recipe to come over the top. Without seeing your swing, it'd be hard to say what you need to do in the backswing to make things easier. But those would be the backswing things, not necessarily the path of the club so much, not necessarily the path of the club, but your turn and your spine angle, the orientation of your body is really, really important to get that club to swing from the inside. So Frank R says, anyone else having video problems? Yeah, sorry for the video problems. There were some issues that looked like in the beginning, but I think that they're fine now. I haven't seen anything pop up since then. So David says, using a speed radar, the 30-minute distance fix has improved my speed with the driver from 100 miles per hour to 129 miles per hour. You must be talking about maybe ball speed. If you're swinging 129 miles per hour, that's insane. I'm happy with that considering I'm 67 years old, but the consistency is not quite there. Suggestions on where to go from there to get consistency. I have a tendency to pull a bit when I miss getting the hips cleared. So if you're pulling, right, if your tendency is to pull, that means that you're coming over the top. A pull, just to define what a pull is, a pull for a right-handed golfer is a shot that starts left and then just goes left, just straight left. There's no not a lot of curvature to it. It's just like a straight left. So what's happening when that happens is that your path is too much out to in, and then your face is in line with that path. So what I would try to do is I would try to almost feel like you're hitting a block, like a push out to the right. Feel like you're swinging more toward first base, and that should straighten things out a little bit. Now, what we have to understand is that the speed training, there's a difference between swinging with 100% effort and your play speed. Your play speed is what you can control. So you're swinging with as much speed as you can that you can control. When you're speed training, you're not worrying about controlling it. You're worrying about what your goal is, to swing with as much speed as possible. So there's a difference between the two. When you go out in the course, you're not trying to swing with as much speed as possible. You're trying to swing with as much speed as you can to be able to control it. And if you work through the course, and that control speed, that play speed is going to go up as your max speed goes up, right? So just to tell you about myself, I've done the course, I've worked through it. I started out at about like 110 miles per hour, got up to 123 miles per hour, and and that was my max speed, the 123 miles per hour. My play speed was something like 117, 118. So my play speed went up like 7-8 miles per hour. Well, I actually tried to swing 110 miles per hour and I couldn't do it. The first time I did it, it was like 113, and it felt like I was swinging slow. I had to feel like I was swinging incredibly slow to swing what used to be a fast speed for me by going through the course and gaining speed. So, and also you have to think about, the further you hit it, the more offline it can go. So, if you gain 29 miles per hour, you're going to gain 2.6 yards for every mile per hour you gain. So assuming that that's not a typo, you gain 29 miles per hour times 2.6. I mean, that's a lot. That's hitting it 50 plus yards further, right? So, sorry, 60 plus yards. Might even be 70. I'm not sure on the math on that, but that's a lot further. So if that is the case, then you got this newfound distance. If you're hitting it as offline as you were before with 100 mile per hour, you're not necessarily less consistent. It's just that you're hitting the ball further, right? So you may want to look at, instead of hitting your driver on some hole, you may have some holes that aren't driver holes. It may be a strategy issue where you need to maybe hit a 3-wood or a hybrid or something like that with that newfound distance. Just some things to think about as you're going through it. So James Q says, hey, Q, does TSG recommend any particular laser rangefinders? Not necessarily, but I've used Bushnell and Nikon, and I think that they're both good. I'm sure there's a lot of other good ones out there. I just haven't used them. But I've owned both Nikon and Bushnell, and I've liked both of them a lot. I mean, I had a Bushnell for probably 10 years or more. I got it in college, and it still works. I just wanted a different one. So, but I would recommend either one of those. But like I said, those are, those are probably at the higher price point, and I'm sure there are cheaper options that are good too. I just haven't used them. So Diane C says, I recently changed the shafts on my irons through my pitching wedge, but I didn't change the shaft in my gap, lob, and sand wedge, and was wondering if it is better to have a shaft all the same, more consistent feel. Any thoughts? Yeah, so I mean, I have the shafts all the same in my clubs. The only clubs that have different shafts are my or like my driver, my fairway woods, and my hybrid. Everything else in my putter, I guess, but everything else has the same shaft in it. That's what I prefer. But I've had clubs. In college, I played different shafts in my wedges in my irons, and honestly, I couldn't have really told you that there was a big difference. So I don't think it makes that big of a difference, but it's possible it could. Roger B says, I'm experimenting with my sequencing at full speed using an alignment stick with each arm separately. I'm finding it's helping with lag and shaft lean at speed, but I can't do it with a club at full speed. Any thoughts or experience on effectiveness? So you just got to work your way up to it. That's all I would recommend doing, is just work your way up to it. You're not going to be able to go to doing something that's completely different from your swing really, really slow and then just adding the club and being able to do it perfectly. I would just try to progress it to where you go faster and faster and faster, add the club, go slow at first, build up the speed, build up the speed. So Barry B says, I just don't understand the motion I should be making to get to release from there. I just don't understand the motion I should be making to get to the release from. Yeah, so that's all in the straight line release course. So that's what I'd recommend doing, Barry. If you're getting that good max lag position, everything else looks good. Spine angles are good. The power turn's good. You're getting that max lag position good. That's what your compression line's good. Go to that straight line release course. Those drills in that course are going to help you to get to that max lag position, to the release out in front position. So just work through those drills. Clay explains all of. If you have anything specific about that, but as far as, I'm not really sure what I can tell you that's going to clear it all up for you, because I'm not really sure what exactly the misunderstanding is. So I would recommend working through the straight line release course and getting through those drills. I think you're going to get a better understanding of what you need to do. All right, so let's keep moving here. We've got about 10 minutes left or so. Let's see how many questions we got. We got a lot of questions left, so I'm going to really zoom through these questions as fast as I can so I can answer everybody's questions. So Frank R. says, I caught the end of your answer to my question about shafts. I was fitted for the irons with the recoil shafts. I don't know my swing speed with the driver, but I know it's in the low 90s. with lighter and more flexible shafts, along with 20-minute disc fix or other courses increase swing speed. It's possible it could, but the only way to know is to get professionally fitted. There's no way for me to know that, or for you to know that, without actually going and trying it. It's not like a clear-cut thing where absolutely lighter shafts and a different flex is going to help. It's really something that you have to actually go trial and error, hit different shafts, and the only way to do that is to go somewhere like a Club Champion and get professionally fitted. George M says 2 questions. 1, had a lot of trouble staying down on my chips today, no matter what or how I tried. Any suggestions? It depends on what you're doing. You may be flipping it a little bit. So if you're flipping, right, then you're going to need to stand up on those chips. So I really try to feel like you keep that lead wrist flat and you keep the hands in front and use the body more when chipping. Feel like you're using the body to move the handle, not the hands to move the handle, but the body to move the hands in the handle, more like that, and keep the hands in front. And then goes on to say, have been working with top speed all winter and spring, improving a lot. My issue is that I have a lot of swing thoughts when I stand over the ball. How do I make this automatic? I'd be just working on one piece at a time. And I would only have a swing thought that helps you hit the golf ball better. So if you work through one piece at a time, it won't be too overwhelming. So that's what I would recommend doing. Work through the reps, work on one piece at a time. And then if you work through the reps and you make it second nature, then it's automatic. You don't even have to think about it. So you work through the reps. We tell you to do those thousands of reps because that's what it takes to make it second nature. A lot of people just want to zoom through the course. Not saying that that's what you're doing, but a lot of people just want to, I'm doing the stable fluid spine. I haven't done all my reps yet. I'm just going to go to the next thing. Well, you need to put in the reps. So that way, when you go to the power turn, you're automatically doing the stable fluid spine. You don't even have to think about it. It's automatic. All right. It's like getting in the car, putting on the seatbelt, putting it in drive. You don't have to think about that when you get in the car because it's just an automatic thing. But when you first started driving, you had to think, okay, check my mirrors. Okay, where's the seatbelt? How do I put it in? Because you haven't done it before. So you just have to work through the reps to make it second nature. Work on one piece at a time, and you won't have so many swing thoughts in your way. Jim H says, I still struggle with hitting the ball thin, sometimes fat, even though I have a good shaft lean. You may have a compression. It's hard to say without seeing your swing, but check your compression line and make sure that it's vertical or just slightly angled away a degree or two. If you're like this and you have a lot of shaft lean, your club may be bottoming out back here and you may be hitting up on the ball, causing thin fat shots. So I check your compression line, and that's the 4th piece of the top speed golf system. If you want to check out the compression line, click the instruction tab, then the top speed golf system, then the compression line. You'll see what I'm talking about there, but you want it to be vertical or just slightly angled away from the target a degree or two. Most likely that will put you in a better position. Tom J says, having an issue popping up my driver. I'm told it's hitting down on the ball. I break tees often, tried more, spine tilt, still pops up sometimes. So I'd look at yourself on video, but typically you probably are chopping down on the ball by swinging over the top. So you can have spine angle and swing over the top. And that's moving the club to where it's going underneath the golf ball. So you need to get the club bottom out before the ball and then work up into it. So if you're more than likely swinging over the top, without seeing your swing, it'd be hard for me to know. But I'd check your swing on video. If you're swinging over the top, you're seeing this kind of motion in the downswing over the top of the hands. The club's moving above the hands in the downswing. Then I would be working on the Never Slice Again course to get that club working from the inside. To get to the Never Slice Again course, click the instruction tab, and then that will take you, or click the house icon. That'll take you to the homepage. Scroll down the homepage. You'll see a list of all the courses there. I have to go right at 4, so I apologize or right at 6. So I apologize if I can't answer everybody's questions here, but I'm going as fast as I can. Richard H says, hey Q, watching Phil yesterday, I noticed a move back to the front foot on full swings to hit bombs. A move back to the front foot. Is that the recoil back forward and normal effect when swinging for high speed? So yeah, basically he's going into his front foot and then he's pushing off some of it as he's coming through. Then he pushes back and away. So he's trying to push out away as the club's moving down to speed up the club, right? So that gets the handle to move up as the club's moving down, and that speeds up the club. And then as he's doing that, he kind of falls back a little bit. So yeah, that's a speed mechanism. We talk about that in the 20-minute distance fix course. You know, the sumo step drill, trying to get pressure into the ground. That'd be a good drill for that. No video problems. Alberto, how do you hit a stinger or knockdown shot? Shaft lean. You have to get shaft lean, get the hands forward. So generally when I hit a stinger, I'll open up my stance a little bit. That's going to help me to open up my body a little bit more. And I'll really focus on getting my knuckles to kind of be angled down and try to get the hands as in front of the ball as possible. Kind of drive down and through it. Try to feel like that club never really releases. And I come through kind of like that. So the hands are really, really long through impact. And the club never really releases. And that just trying to smash it as much as you can down there. It's an advanced shot. It's not easy. Something you got to practice. But turning the handle down, getting the hands in front, opening the body, those are all things that I'll be trying to do. Ball a little bit back in the stance too. So John S. says, after surgeries and rehab, I am back to full range of motion with my hips. Now I need to break my bad habit of straightening my back leg too much. What drill do you recommend? I'm finishing my swing nicely, but I'm hitting slightly fat with the iron. So when, I guess I'm confused, when you say you're straightening the back leg too much, when are you straightening the back leg? You want your leg to straighten in the backswing, and then it's going to flex in the start of the downswing. And then as you come through, it's going to start to straighten as you're coming through, as your lead hip is opening. So I guess I'm confused about, I'm not sure when you're saying straightening the back leg too much. Let me know if you can in the next minute, and I'll try to help as much as I can. Carl K says, is it normal or a problem to go back and forth between taking the club back and keeping the club head outside the hands to just bringing the club head inside? I feel like there are a lot of days where the outside swing is uncomfortable. Additionally, it's more comfortable and with different clubs, really comfortable with the driver. I wouldn't say it's necessarily a problem. The only thing that matters is impact. So whatever helps you get to a good impact position is what you should do. So I think too many people put too much focus into the backswing. A good setup sets up a good backswing. A good backswing sets up a good downswing. A good downswing sets up a good impact. So if your downswing is good, then you don't need to worry about everything else before that, right? If your impact is good, right, that's everything else before that was good, right? So that you really need to focus on impact and work your way back from there. That's how you really improve. So like I said, I have to go here pretty quick. Lonnie says, it's okay to lift your left heel on your backswing. Absolutely, completely fine. That can open up your hips and make things a lot easier. So last question here from Diane C says, that was very insightful when you provided me something to look at to help with coming over the top, to watch the spine angle and shoulder turn. I tend to come over the top and have been challenged getting it from the inside, so I will be mindful of these insights when I practice. Yeah, Diane, these are the things that I've been talking about. You know, your spine angle, I think, is good. You don't really have a problem with that anymore. But what we were talking about is getting the hands deeper, because you like to get the hands up here, which makes it a lot difficult to get the club to work from the inside. So feeling like those hands get more back behind you, more flatter, can definitely help you to swing more from the inside. So thanks, everybody, for joining me. It's right at 6 right now. Sorry I can't stick around and answer more questions, but gotta get going. So everybody have a good rest of the day, and I will talk to y'all next time.